Hi, this is the Paul Ribbons podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about dyslexia and whether it's a curse or a gift. Now, dyslexia affects an awful lot of people throughout the world. And my issue with it is quite simple. Someone's come along and said, these are the criteria, this is what you have to do. And the majority of people fit into that criteria and okay, they can deal with the curriculum that's set. But a big chunk of us can't do it. We find it difficult. Now today it's a lot easier today to be diagnosed. And if a kid is struggling at school, they're usually picked up quite quickly and they're given extra support, and it's recognised today. But when I was a kid in the 60s and the 70s, it was very much a different world. I was labelled a badly behaved kid, and due to the fact my mother had passed when I was 3. They put a lot of my issues down to the fact that I'd lost my mum and I was playing up. So they thought. And that probably was right for the best part of maybe 3-4 years. Because when you start to go to school, you notice that things are different. You're different. You stand out. The kids today, very different world they live in. Back then, they would bully you, take the mickey out of you because you didn't have a mum and stuff like that. So there was, they put it down to my bad behaviour, down to me and losing my mum. Now, that wasn't the case, right? They were giving me stuff to do and I couldn't do it. But here's the thing, right? And this is what I sort of alluded to earlier. Is it a gift or a curse? I was intelligent. I picked things up quickly. So they were thinking, well, he's just not trying hard enough. Because when it comes to writing it down or reading or whatever the case may be, there would be problems because my vocabulary is quite extensive. I know what a word is and what it means. I might not be able to spell it, but I use language in the correct context, and I've got a love affair with the English language. But when it comes to grammar, when it comes to writing or reading, then I do struggle, and sometimes it's worse than others. And I was labelled an aggressive, immature, can't be bothered. All these labels they attached to me, and the aggression was down to the fact that I was frustrated because I couldn't do what they asked and they couldn't see what the problem was, and they were just saying, well, you're a naughty kid, and so it got to the stage in my teens in secondary school where I'd rather get kicked out of the class and get the slipper, because we had corporal punishment in them days, than to read out loud in the class or do the work that was expected, because it was easier to try and get out of the class. And I got labelled as a troublemaker, so I was easily led and I was a bad influence. I mean, what a contradiction that is in terms, eh? And so I would find myself playing truant a lot. I'd go and get my mark, and the teachers didn't really want me in their class, so they didn't really bother saying, oh, he didn't turn up today or he didn't come to this lesson. I was good at metalwork. I was good with my hands. And I can problem solve. I just couldn't read and write or do exams. That's the bottom line. So this followed me around, and I had entrepreneurial skills when I was younger. I had 3 jobs when I was about 14. Milk round. I'd have paraffin round, paper rounds, all sorts of different jobs I did. I used to pull the stalls out at Walthamstow Market, help stall holders set them up, all these different types of jobs I'd been doing. I was a grafter, a real grafter. And I had aspirations even back in them days. And I was always looking to earn money. But my options were limited because of the fact that I left school with no qualifications. I didn't even go in for the exams because I knew I wouldn't pass them. So over a period of time, I left school. I was working in a bakery at the time. I had a Saturday job and they offered me a full-time job. My dad said, get into food, clothing and housing and you can't go wrong. So, baking is food. So that was my career choice. And I had aspirations even then for doing better than I'd become. And I pushed over the few years, and I think I got to about 21 and I wanted to be bakery manager, and they gave me the opportunity. And then they realised that the bakery manager is not just about managing people and making sure the bread gets out on time or the cakes get out on time. It comes down to you've got to do stock takes, you've got administration to do. And I got found out quite quickly. And I had some certain amounts of coping mechanisms, and I used to, because one thing I was very, very good at was I had people skills, and I used to get people on my side, and I get people to do the admin for me, and I managed to literally get through it, and that's all it was. I was getting through it. I wasn't thriving. It was just literally just getting by, because I was the manager, but I was hanging on for dear life, really. And then I because of these aspirations, I had ideas that I wanted to get out of the baking trade, and I remember buying a flat in 1986 and thinking to myself, and this was my mantra, and I think this is when we talked about whether it's curse or it's a gift, my mantra has always been, I watch someone do something, I think I can do that. If depending on, if you said I've got to do some calligraphy, it might be different, but I'd just look at something and think, I can do that. And I was watching people sell houses and think, I can do that. And I managed to blag my way into a estate agency. He didn't know I had no qualifications. He took me on face value. I got on well with him because I had the people skills. And that's what most agencies about, estate agencies about, selling, ultimately. And they employed me. And I was there for about a week. And I do remember the first time I had to fill a form in. And we used to have a morning meeting every morning about 8:30 before the office opened. And this guy, Roger Fulbrook, said to me, have you filled the form in? I said, yeah, I filled the form in. And I gave it to him, and he looked at me and he laughed. And he tore it up in front of everyone in that morning meeting. And I felt about that big. And it didn't, I kicked off. Area manager came down, where I had a conversation. He said, why didn't you tell me? I said, well, would you give me a job if I'd have told you? He went, no, probably not. So I was thinking to myself, I'm going to go back to the baking trade. But he stuck with me. He said, look, you're going to have to try hard. And it was tough. It was tough. And so the good thing about estate agency, it was changing at the time. There was lots of changes, and the administration became less of an issue. We had dictaphones, so when we took a property on, we could talk to it, just measure up, and I didn't have to then worry about writing it all down. There were times when you'd have to, and I'd have to make a big effort to make sure that my administration was half reasonable, and my office was a mess. I must admit, my desk was full of unfinished admin, and it was hard. It was hard. But over the years, I got to the estate agency manager, and all I did was, and these were my coping mechanisms. I just get someone else to do it for me. So I had really good secretaries. Always surrounded myself with people that could do the things that I couldn't. And that, again, that's entrepreneurial. You're surrounding yourself with people, a team that you can build on. because I had the big visions and I had the ideas and I had, I was really good at what I did. I just couldn't do the admin. Simple as that. And over the years, I didn't get diagnosed with dyslexia until I got tested, and it was probably in my latter 30s, coming up for 40. And it was during my kids were going to school, and I was watching them with their reports and stuff, and I was noticing that when they get to 7 and 8, that their writing was better than mine, and listening to them read, and I got tested, and I had the reading age of a 7-year-old, getting on for 40. It was quite embarrassing, really. And I find it a lot easier. I've done lots of techniques where I've learnt to get through it, and I think the biggest issue I find with dyslexia, or people with dyslexia, or and if you've got dyslexia or someone with dyslexia, you'll probably see this as a trait. There is an identity issue. You're labelled. You're thick, or you're stupid, or you're not clever, because you haven't got a qualification, and that's what it comes down to, a qualification. Someone set the criterion, the curriculum many years ago, and if you don't conform to that curriculum, then therefore society sees you as less, or you're thick, you're not as clever as everybody else, which is not the case. There's a lot of people out there who have got dyslexia who are very successful at what they do. And I do remember when I was doing an NLP course, a practitioner's course, and we were talking about identity, and we were talking about beliefs, and how do you see yourself, and all this come up about, I'm not as, it's a self-worth issue. I'm thick. I was told that I was a problem. And it wasn't till I look back and think, well, where's the proof? Okay, so apart from the proof of not getting a qualification, then really there is no proof that I'm thicker than somebody else, or not as intelligent, I should say. And my handwriting was pretty bad, and the question was, is my handwriting bad? Yeah, it is. It's pretty crap. But actually, if someone stuck a gun to my head and said, "I'm going to blow your brains out unless you write neatly," well, actually, I could probably write neatly. And back in, I can't remember what it was now, many years ago, I used to write in a journal, and it looked like a spider had crawled in the ink pot, fell out, and crawled across the page. That's how bad my handwriting was. It was illegible to most people. It was barely legible to me, only because I knew what I'd written. I could remember. I got a reasonable good memory. And then I realised that if I could write neatly, if someone put a gun to my head, then it's a choice. And my handwriting changed literally straight away. And this is just a sort of like a quick excerpt of my handwriting. I write with a fountain pen deliberately because it slows me down. That's one of my techniques of dealing with dyslexia. If you slow your writing down, because my brain goes far faster than my hand does, I have to think about every word I write. So it slows me down and it makes me think. And the spelling's not great, don't get me wrong. With modern technology, it allowed us to do many things. And I'm pretty proud of this, right? This is my book. I wrote this book. And I wrote it back in 2011. But I wrote it in 2 weeks, but it was not written in 2 weeks, really, because the preparation prior to that was quite a lot. And I'm always looking to improve as a person in my skills, and because I had this dyslexia, I had to find ways to compensate for that. And one way was to, I didn't get on with a keyboard. So laptops were difficult, computers were difficult. So I got a computer disk when we had, we had a normal computer, a Windows, and we had discs in our computers. Do you remember we used to slide the discs in? It seems so long ago. And it was called Mavis Beacon's Learn to Type. And I used to have a ritual every morning. I used to get up, write in my journal, sit down, have thoughts, reflect, plan my day out. And I would sit there for 15 minutes every day and practice typing on the keyboard. And I got up to 60 words a minute, actual speed, but I got knocked down to 20 words a minute because of the mistakes I was making, which didn't bother me because most people think, oh, God, I made mistakes. I got used to the keys, and that was more, and it wasn't, I was missing the keys. I was misspelling words. I was getting the keys right, but I was misspelling the words. Well, I can live with that because, you know, there's a limit, and that's on a test you've got no auto correction or anything like that. But when you write with a keyboard nowadays, there's auto correction. There's auto predictive text. So when you're writing it starts to predict the word that you've got. And I did this Mavis Beacon's stuff for about 6 months, and it got me used to doing where the keys were. So when I came to write the book, that's why it only took me 2 weeks, because I'd prepared for it. And it's about understanding that if you have dyslexia, it's finding ways to cope with it. Coping mechanisms. Because modern technology allows us to, you can dictate stuff nowadays. You can talk to a computer and it will type out what you want. I mean, with AI, there won't be a need for education like we had before. And you might find in that new curriculum that we're going to land up with in the next 10, 15 years, that dyslexia amongst us is probably going to thrive because they think differently. They think in a different way. And that's probably when you'll see the rise of the people with dyslexia not feeling thick and stupid because they won't have to do things in the old traditional way. So is it a gift or is it a curse? Well, it depends which way you look at it. I spoke to many friends of mine whose kids have got dyslexia, and I go, well, that's a result. And they'll go, oh, but they've got dyslexia and they're struggling at school. I said, yeah, but they don't. I guarantee you they're intelligent. Yeah, they are. And I guarantee you they're problem solving. They're probably really good at something else, really good. Because I've got some great skills for focusing and getting information. I find the fastest, easiest, most effective way of doing everything. And that's important to me. So I'm in the midst of writing another book, which is going to be a lot easier than the first one with technology nowadays. But if you have dyslexia, put some comments in the section below and tell me how you cope with it. What coping mechanisms do you use? And if you know someone who's got it, let's have a conversation about it. If you've got this far with the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. But this is the Paul Ribbons podcast. Thanks for listening.